We've adopted the idea that junk is a verb, not a noun. Like it's the act of casting something aside. We're not calling the thing junk. And I think that helps us frame it in the right way. So if anybody has those, hey, I don't know if you do this, my stuff's not junk questions, then reach out to us because we're happy to talk about it. And sometimes the answer is, hey, call this organization because they can help. So it's not always us. I mean, we can always be a part of the solution, but let's understand what the problem is and how you're trying to navigate it, and then can we put you in the right place? Because at the end of the day, we're not trying to get rich on any one job.
This episode of Grounded in Maine is sponsored by ESG Review. ESG Review magazine is published quarterly in February, May, August, and November, and is available for free in print and digital formats. ESG Review is devoted to environmental, social, and governance strategies, technologies, and investments. ESGreview.net is updated every Wednesday with 8 new stories and is home to feature articles, news items, and more. Visit esgreview.net to stay informed and help us spark the collaboration and awareness needed to develop sustainable economies and communities around the world.
There's a place where there's no trouble, no more pain, no more struggle.
Grounded in Maine podcast is an open conversation about how we show up for the world. I started this podcast out of a desire to learn new ways to be sustainable because the word sustainability is big. It can be overwhelming, and I just wanted to learn, different ways to try to be part of the solution and not feel like it's too late. So I'm talking to people who are doing different things and learning so much. I hope you are too. Hi there. Thank you so much for listening to Grounded in Maine today. My name is Amy. My guest today is Cameron Ungar of Trash and Stash. And this is a very interesting conversation. I'm very excited to learn about this because this is kind of going in line with the last couple of episodes where we talked about recycling and composting. So this is like junk removal, diverting from the landfill. And so, Cameron, I'm really excited to learn from you. Thank you so much for your time today.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
So, can you tell us what Trash and Stash is and how you got here?
Yeah. So how I got here is not a straight line. So maybe I'll start with what Trash and Stash is. And so, yes, what you said, we are, for all intents and purposes, a junk removal company like the big names that you see rolling around your city streets and posting corrugate plastic signs on your local medians. And so we come into people's homes. Typically, we're working with people in moments of transition. So it's often it can be seasonal, and so this time of year we're exceptionally busy. But it's also people who are going through death, divorce, empty nest, helping parents move into assisted living. And there's something that's happening, and the stuff in their life has become problematic, and so we come in and we help resolve that, and we try to do it as sustainably and responsibly as we can to make sure that the things we put our hands on gets a shot at a second life, should it be in condition to do so. And then how I got here, that's a longer story, but Trash and Stash is a COVID baby. So my previous career, I used to work in arena management. So I managed stadiums and arenas. I spent most of my career on college campuses. I'm originally from San Diego, and so West Coast, but managed a few 5,000 seat basketball arenas on area college campuses, baseball stadiums. And what I love about the events business is it's multidisciplinary. So you're working on all sorts of things. It's a bunch of different businesses coming together at once, and it all happens on a really finite deadline. And turns out, when there's a global pandemic and the public is no longer able to assemble, when your business is public assembly, I had to think about what was next. I was actually pretty resigned to moving away from that career. I loved what I did, but it's also tough. It's nights and weekends. You're working when everybody else is recreating.
Late
You're,
nights, not just nights.
yeah, I mean, it's a full 8-hour office shift, and then tip off is at 7 p.m. and you're working through the game, and then you got to tear it down and turn it over for tomorrow's event. So it's long days. You're a bit of a commodity because it's the type of job where there's a lot of hungry young people who want to get into that line of work and they're excited about the environment. And so it's hard to raise a family. For me, it was hard to raise a family in that lifestyle. So I was ready for a change. I didn't feel like COVID had taken anything from me. I actually looked at the pandemic as an opportunity to really figure out what was next. There's not a lot of time. Opportunities when you're 40 years old to be able to kind of reinvent yourself and think about what you're going to do next, and it afforded me that. I know it's everybody had suffered in their own way through that period of time, and it was not easy, but it was an opportunity to kind of figure out what was next. And so I was looking around. I really loved the idea of a sweaty startup. Like I wanted to go out and work with my hands. I felt like I was this widget, like I was a middle manager, and in the absence of having people to manage, in the absence of having a building to manage, like how could I really go out and earn and prove my worth? So I love the idea of going out and working. I also felt like as much as I had this opportunity to reinvent myself to go and become a plumbing apprentice or become an electrician's apprentice, like that, I still had people to support. And so I didn't have time to really start over in that way. And so I was looking around and I'm seeing garages full of stuff and empty of cars and moving trucks on every street at that time. And especially here, I'm in Charlotte, seeing storage units being built faster than houses. And so I'm like, okay, like we have a stuff problem. And then at the same time, I'm looking at my kids who didn't really have screen time problems, but all of a sudden they've all got screens in their hand and they're spending way more time and they're asking to buy things that they never asked to buy before. I'm like, dang, like now we're being like just sold. And so I'm like, how do I like rally against this mass consumerism? And so I'm like, I know, like, let's just make all this stuff go away. And so I look at Trash and Stash like it was an act of rebellion a little bit at that time. Like, let's stop over
Heck
consuming and
yeah.
let's just start simplifying. And so it was those combination of things that kind of got me to where I'm at. I bought at that time a Sprinter van. I'd never in my whole life stepped foot in a dump. And so I had this truck sitting in my driveway, and I'm like, every day that it's not running is a day that I'm not making money. And so we got to work. That was 5 years ago. That was April of 2021. And so we've learned a lot since then. But that was the origin story.
And you got something bigger than a Sprinter van now, I assume?
We do not much. I mean, we
Yeah.
we have we drive
We
a
have
F three.
two Sprinter vans.
Yeah, we do have a retired U-Haul, 10-foot box truck. Her name is Bella, and she's great. Like she works really hard, but the guys will prefer to drive that truck. They hated it when I bought it because they thought it was way too small, but it works really well. It's fuel efficient. It's can get into tight spaces. Like it's really easy to operate, and so
Well, you've got
that
like a ramp, right?
yeah, I mean, we lift everything into it anyway. It's low enough to the ground that we typically aren't using the ramp, but yeah, I mean, they really the complaint was that they thought it was going to be too small. But we're really good at packing trucks, and that's what we tell people is when you hire us, sometimes we're competing against the big name franchises and the other guys who are doing junk removal. Often we're competing against people who can do it themselves, and one way they do it themselves is through dumpster rentals. Um, Dumpster rentals have their place, and we actually have dumpsters that we can make available to people. But you often pay for a lot of airspace. You might only use 15 yards of a 30-yard dumpster, but you're paying for 30 yards. With us, you're paying for the actual space that you use. And we've gotten really good at maximizing truck space. So we get a lot into that little truck. So not much bigger than the Sprinter van we started with, but something. And then we do have a heavy duty pickup, and we've got a roll off dumpster system. So we've got 18-yard bins, and we also have another dump trailer. And then we'll use rental trucks as often as we need to.
Okay. That's really interesting. And I love that it happened during COVID because I feel like there when you said it was you didn't really you didn't really suffer a lot. Like you had it was kind of a gift, right? And I think of it that way because I know a lot of people were out of work and it was really scary and all that, but there's also like so much quality time with family and like, people were downsizing or, cleaning out and doing gardening and learning to bake and stuff like that. And so, that it wasn't all bad. I know people were concerned about money and rightfully so, but there were definitely pros
Yeah. Yeah.
to things being shut down. And so, but you were in California and then you moved to Charlotte.
Yeah, so I actually moved to Charlotte pre-COVID. So we left California in 2018. And the reason was, so at the time when I was living in San Diego, I was working at the Olympic Training Center, which was a really cool place to work. I was There was a transition where the USOC had decided that they were no longer going to operate the center, and they had given it to the city, and the city brought in a management company. And so I was part of that management company that had come in to operate it. And it was really a unique place to work. I got to work with a lot of national governing bodies and be around Olympic athletes every day. It was also a 30-year-old facility, and so I think that was part of the thought process when the USOC had given it up, was there's a lot of repair and improvements that are going to need to happen, and let's let somebody else be responsible for that. They still had a use agreement, so they still got to use it. And so there was maybe a little bit of shell shuffling happening. But anyway, the opportunity for me was to be able to come in. It was residential, so I was, instead of just managing facilities and field spaces, I was managing dorms and a housing unit. So it was kind of hotel operations. So I got that up off the ground. I had always been doing freelance event management, my entire time working in the events business. And my grandmother had passed away and she had left some money. And so I was like, if there's ever going to be a chance for me to pursue something entrepreneurial, now's the time for me to do it. I felt like the training center had, I, I fulfilled my part. Like I got it off the ground, it was running, we had an operating plan in place. And so I was ready for a different challenge, and let's go pursue this entrepreneurial endeavor. I loved my event management business, but it was better as a side gig and not as a forever gig. Mostly because I didn't want to travel. Like I was going to have to travel 40, 50 hours or 40, 50 weekends a year. And I wasn't prepared to do that. And so I
No, that
needed to
sounds
figure,
yucky.
yeah, yeah. So I needed to figure something else out. So that's what brought me to Charlotte, was let's go to some place where the quality of life is good, the cost of living is a little better than Southern California, and that my runway for operating a business, it was a little bit longer. And I knew I was going to travel for work anyway, and so whether I was traveling from here or there was sort of irrelevant. So we were here pre-COVID, and I tried on a lot of hats during that COVID experiment to kind of figure out where I wanted to go. And I studied computer tech. I'm not a tech person at all, but I wasn't sure if that was because I was scared of it, or because I never had tried it, or because I didn't have the aptitude. It turns out I don't have the aptitude. And then I tried marketing, and I really like marketing. I like the psychology of it. But I'm like, if I'm going to develop a marketing business, like I should probably have a business that I can market rather than just marketing a marketing business. And so that's what put me on that sweaty startup path, and here I'm at.
Right. And so now, are you still interested in marketing or are you just marketing your business?
I mean, I use Trash and Stash as my playground, and I like tinkering with the web page. I built the web page. I like doing the social media stuff. I don't like social media per se, but I like the act of creating things. And so that's kind of my sandbox. Like I started a local networking group here. Um, and so it's only trades business owners. And so we've created a guidebook that we hand out in people's homes. We've turned that into a digital book. We've sort of created some networking opportunities through that. So that's sort of the extent of my marketing tinkering at this point. I try to keep it in perspective, because I can get lost in that kind of stuff, and then I feel busy, but that may not be the most productive use of my time. So I try to be cognizant of that. So I'm still interested in it, but I try to keep it segmented, in its place as much as I can.
Gotcha. That's interesting. So I love that you created a network for like the tradespeople and people in similar work situations, I guess. I think that's pretty great marketing in itself, right? Like if someone is hired someone in a different area of work and they're like, oh, I've just got this pile of stuff. And they'd be like, hey, I know somebody for you.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah. That
I know
I mean,
someone you should call.
yep, yep. That's I mean, the goal that group is twofold. One, it was intended to be a referral network, but also it's kind of a mastermind group because we're all business owners. We all share the same challenges, and can learn. Sometimes, I don't need to study Elon Musk because wherever he is in his business, it's not necessarily relevant to me. But there is the local roofer who's been doing it for 3 years longer than me. And she's probably crossed a couple bridges that I've yet to cross. And there's a lot for me to learn from those experiences. And similarly, like even if I'm newer, there may be things that I've experienced that she hasn't. And so being able to have that exchange of knowledge is very valuable. And there's no
Yeah.
handbook to being self-employed, and we don't have this corporate guidebook to be able to follow or support.
Mm.
And so it's nice just to be able to have a group of people who can kind of pat you on the back or say, "Hey, you'll figure it out." At the moment you need
Or
it.
this worked for me.
Exactly.
I love that. Very, very good. Good for you. I I had thoughts while you were talking and I thought that I would remember and I don't. But I love the idea of it. I just think that I'm curious, is the business good in Charlotte?
It is. It is. It's I mean, we're busy. Our goal is to keep two trucks fully operational. Each truck should be doing 4 jobs per day, 5 or 6 days a week. And so, we're looking to do 30 jobs a week. Our business is not like other home service businesses in that we don't necessarily have like a subscription model. So we're not a housekeeper that's coming back to your house every 2 weeks. So we have to generate a lot of business. We do get a lot of recurring business. And so I think a lot of our residential customers recognize like how easy it can be. Like if you're sitting around looking at all the like there's a lot of overwhelm. Like overwhelm is a big word for our customers, and
Absolutely.
they've finally gotten like what's that pain pleasure like threshold, and most of our people call us because the pain threshold has reached its point where they need to do something about it. And then once they realize like it doesn't have to be a big problem, they end up calling us back quite a bit. So we do get a fair amount of reoccurring business. And then we do commercial business. And so we work with we work with a shower door company. And so we come out every 2 weeks and pick up the shower doors that they take out of people's homes because they recognize that sending their skilled techs to the dump is waste. There's an opportunity cost. Those guys should be out there installing, not going there going
Right.
to places like landfills. There's a lot of wear and tear on your vehicles. And so rattling through there is not a great use.
Yeah.
And so they've recognized it's a better use of their resources to have us come and clean out rather than have those guys do it. But
Yeah.
we do eviction clean outs for apartment complexes. We clean out their dumpster enclosures where people leave their bulk waste stuff. Um, we do office decommissionings, warehouse decommissionings, those sorts of things. So we do have a fair amount of reoccurring. We just don't have that subscription model.
Yeah. Okay. And I'm just curious because when you were talking about your previous job, when you were event management, you were working with like dorms and stuff like that. Like, are you hooked into the college situation there?
Getting more and more so. So I actually have a meeting with one of our local universities here next week to go review their move out process, and what happens in that turnover where there's a lot of stuff that is ripe for, and they actually have a pretty good plan in place. And so we wouldn't be coming in to necessarily redo anything, but to be probably some muscle for them and a support resource. But we're doing more of that. We've actually started doing a lot more event work also, tapping back into my old line of work. And that comes across in a couple ways. So we go out to festivals, concerts, sporting events, and we do their trash service. And so we'll put out collection receptacles, do the sorting on site, and then be able to provide diversion reports at the end. So especially events that are sensitive to trying to do zero waste events or pay attention to landfill diversion, those are great for us. And so we're the guys on site who are going through the trash cans, and we're putting up signs and telling people, hey, here, do this, do that. And making sure that bottles and cans and cardboard and all those things go where they're supposed to. A lot of that is really
Yes.
front end decisions, like, and so much of what we do in terms of landfill diversion is reactionary because you're reacting to the consumer decision that's already been made. And so if we can get in and consult, then we can advise on, if you really are trying to go zero waste, or here's where you were at last year, let's talk about a goal for next year so that we can come up, improve on those areas. So we're doing that sort of work. We're also finding, so like we had a great meeting with the folks at uh, Charlotte Visitor Authority. And when these big conventions come into town, they bring in a lot of things that is often temporary. Like, it's events are temporary in nature. Like, they're extremely wasteful because you're catering to a lot of people in a very temporary environment. And so sometimes these trade shows come in and they'll buy 6 couches from Wayfair because it's cheaper actually to do that than to rent it from a rental company. Then at the end of the
For real,
show,
that is crazy.
yeah. So then at the end of the show, they call the convention center and say, hey, we're all done, but we got these 6 couches left over here. And so we're now working with them on how can we come in and work with our donation partners or resale program to be able to keep that stuff in the world and not just use it for 6 days and trash it. And they do a good job of that. They've got a lot of infrastructure in place also. But a lot of times they're having to react because they don't necessarily know what's going to be left behind from some of these shows. And so now we're getting more involved in that operation as well.
Wow, I had no idea about that. That's crazy that buying new is more, if there's not a good word for it. It's easier, I guess, less expensive, you said, than renting?
Yeah, I think it's
What's
cost
that?
equivalent or cost advantageous. It's easier because you can go on a web page and click a button, and like, it's friction. I mean, even I went into Target to buy something and I had to wait to have a guy, the headphones that I can't use. And I waited for the guy to unlock the thing, and I'm like, man, I could have like clicked the buy now on Amazon, and I don't have to track 3 people down in the store, and so I think it's maybe some of that same thing. But even when I was meeting with them, they had a show that had just ended, and they had like 16 picnic tables that they were leaving behind and trying to find a home for. So, um,
Oof.
and that doesn't include the packaging and the shipping material and all the other stuff that comes with
That comes with,
road
yeah.
shows that are constantly traveling.
Yes. Oh, wow. And so, okay, so if we're thinking about, 6 couches, 16 picnic tables, like what happens to that?
Yeah, I mean, so for us, we do. There's one of 4 things that are going to happen to it. We're either going to donate it. We have a resale program, and so we've got a warehouse that we operate out of. We have a small 800 square foot showroom, but it's essentially an antique slash thrift store that we'll bring in. We have a program, and this is part of our B Corp, but we pair up with the Isabel Santos Foundation, and we donate a portion of the sale proceeds to ISF, which is a pediatric cancer research organization. And so we do that. That came about really because, one, I had met that organization, and it's really humbling, the sort of work that they do. And there's moments where we're in heavy situations, but they live in the heavy situations. And so to see what those families are going through, and the people who work for them, like, are having to shoulder that constantly. So I have a lot of
Sure.
respect for the work that they do, but also, like, I remember very distinctly, like, we were in this woman's house. It was very early in Trash and Stash, and she had this huge basement. Her husband had passed away, and there was just stuff everywhere. And she didn't know where to start. Like, she was totally overwhelmed, and we're like, "Well, what do you need to go?" And she's like, "That and that and that." And, like, you could tell she was just picking the things that she didn't really have a connection to. But I think there was just so much, the stuff was causing so much noise that she needed to just thin it out.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
then we left there and we threw a lot of it away, all of it away. And we're like looking at each other and we're like, this feels bad. Like, this feels wrong. there's got to be something
Yeah.
better that we can do with this. Like, we've solved her problem to an extent. Like, we've gotten stuff out of her house, but now we've driven over this landfill and we're contributing. We're participating in a larger problem, and so I don't know if we've solved anything in that situation. And so that's where our Second Life program was born. We're like, if nothing else, let's bring it back and we can figure out how to sell it. And then we're like, well, people are going to feel like we're double dipping. We're not, because when we take, they're relinquishing the stuff to us, so it becomes our possession when they give it to us. So we're not double dipping, and there's a cost for us to truck it back and forth. There's a cost for us to warehouse it. There's a cost for us to be able to put it on Facebook Marketplace. So, like, it's not like we're making extra money off of it, but we didn't want that to be the perception that we were taking, that we had our hands in both their pockets. And so we're like, well, let's just come up with a giving program. And so that way we can tell people, hey, yes, we will take the stuff back. There's a good chance we're going to resell it, but your dollars are going to be used for good. So now the things are going to be kept out of landfill. We sell them at liquidation prices because we don't want to be able to hold it. So we'll sell them cheap, and so we can put it in the hands of people who can use it, and we can give a little bit of the money back to an organization that is doing good work in the community. So that's option two. We have a resale program. The third is recycle. So we work with our cardboard recyclers and scrap yards and those sorts of things to be able to recycle the things that are appropriate there. And then if it doesn't fit any of those three criteria, then we'll still dump it. Last year, we put our hands on just over 1,000,000 pounds worth of stuff, and we diverted about 580,000 pounds of
Wow.
stuff, or yeah, about there. So it was like 48% landfill diversion. And so our goal was 50%. So we got pretty close. We were up from about 30% the year before. And I was very sensitive to that 30% number because I was like, that doesn't feel very good. Like, I mean, I was good at school, like 30%, 50%. Like, I don't like that number. But then I was like, it's still 30% more than would have gone someplace else. It was still 300,000 pounds of stuff that didn't go into landfill. And it's
Right.
easy. It's you have to pay attention to that, and we have to not beat ourselves up too much because, like you started the conversation, like if if you get overwhelmed by the problem, then you're just like, well, none of it's like, why even bother? Why do any of this? And so even when we were at 30%, I think we had to champion that success and say, like, that's something to grow on. Like, it's 30% more than nothing, and last year was 20% more than that, and this year hopefully we crossed that 50% threshold. So we're not going to be perfect. There's going to be things that could have been donated or could have been resold that don't get donated or resold. Um, but we try to make the best decision we can as often as we can, and learn from the poor decisions we make along the way.
Yeah. Well, so I mean that year that so was it 2 years ago you said you diverted 30%, but was the year before that, was it less
It
than
was it
30%?
was
Was it still
about
30?
30%. Yeah, we were pretty consistently 30% the first couple years we were tracking. But
Well, then you're making
like,
progress.
yeah, like what they say, you got to measure to know where you're at, and to give yourself a chance to improve. And so we've got pretty good tracking numbers now, and we're actually, the way we pay our crew, they're incentivized to make better decisions on the truck. And so, I mean, I'll be transparent. One of the ways we do it is we have what we call an efficiency bonus. And so we try to keep our operating expense at 10%. And so that's fuel and dump fees. Anything below 10% becomes a bonus that gets paid back to our crew. And so they can control that by running more efficient routes so they're not using as much fuel. Using the box truck, which is more fuel efficient than the truck and trailer, by donating, reselling, and recycling rather than dumping. And so all of that goes back into their efficiency costs. And so last month, we were under 4%. And so they ended up getting a nice bonus out of it, but it's because they made good decisions out in the field.
Yeah. I mean that's got to feel really good. I mean, you're doing the job that was requested and you're being rewarded for that. So they're going to remember that, of course. Like we just need to make sure to save as much as we can because we don't want to add to But I appreciate so much that you're educating your team and not just like save as much as you can. It's, there's an explanation, there's understanding around that. And I'm curious, as far as that, like with your customers, do your customers must call on you because they believe in your mission?
Um, yes. So I think it comes, there's probably two or three categories of people. So there are definitely the 100% mission people who are like, I called you because, like, I read your webpage, I know what you're about, like, that's exactly what I'm looking for. I don't care what it costs, like, I want to use you. So that's a probably 20%, like that's not the majority of our people. And then I think there's another class of people who like definitely want to do the right thing. Like if they had the choice of I don't care, do whatever you want with it, or I'd prefer you do the right thing, they're going to want to do the right thing, but there's a limit to that because they are going to, like most of us, we've got budgets to maintain. And so they've got to make sure that it aligns within their budget. I think a large part of those people, so like we talked about the psychology of stuff, most people who fall into that like 70-80% category aren't really motivated by sustainability. Like they don't want to be wasteful. They don't like the idea of their things being thrown away, but they also
Just
recognize
let it
the
go.
value of the stuff. And so either that can be, hey, we paid a lot of money for this and now we're going to pay even more to dispose of it. I don't like that feeling. But often it's like, especially when we're in those moments of transition, it's like, hey, my mom loved this china cabinet, but I do not want it in my house. And so I hate the idea of it being thrown away. So if there's a way that somebody else who's going to love it as much as my mom did can get it, then that's important to me. And so like if we can tell that story or reach people in that story, or like, there's all those times, especially when people are putting their parents into assisted
Mm-hmm.
living or care communities,
Yeah.
there's so much that they're worried about. And the stuff is just this physical barrier that's existing in the space. And so if we can say, hey, we can handle stuff, you don't have to worry about that. You've made the phone call, that stuff's under control, and we can honor your mom's memory. We can honor like her stuff and make sure that it gets treated the way it needs to. That's a more compelling story to reach those
Mm-hmm.
people who care about sustainability but aren't moved by sustainability. And then there's people who are like, you know, Google junk removal near me and who's the fastest and the cheapest. And sometimes we are. At the end of the day, it's a bit of a subjective, science. And so I might interpret something as a quarter truck and somebody else interprets it as a half truck. And so, there's some math that goes into that, and we use calculators and tools to be able to make sure we're consistent in our pricing. But there's some
Mm-hmm.
subjectivity into that. And so
Of
um,
course.
you can't always win the cheapest and fastest. And we don't want to.
Right. I think there's I feel like at this time in the world there should be more of a need for something like this. I mean, there's been decades or, a couple decades of like excess, just with
Hmm.
Amazon and the fast fashion brands and stuff like that. Like there's so much stuff and our houses are full and if someone has to move or someone passes away or whatever, like there's just so much stuff to deal with. I remember when my mom moved out of her house, she had not just her stuff, but she had her husband's stuff that he had passed away and his first wife's stuff. So like 60
Yeah.
years worth of stuff. It was there was like a jar of jam in the basement that was from like 1976. And like, nobody was going to eat
Yeah.
that, but just like the amount of stuff that builds up over decades of living in the same house. And I feel like there are things that you have zero connection with. You're like, I don't even know how this got here. And then there are things that are just like so sentimental that it's painful for you to deal with yourself. And we had rented a dumpster for my moms, we did not have this option, but she just was like collecting things, and there were like 7 can openers and dresses that she hadn't worn in decades and stuff like that. But um, it is painful for someone to have to deal with stuff like that um, in certain situations. And sometimes people are like, I don't care, like I just need it gone. So I think that there are so many reasons why having someone actually take care in moving things out instead of just like throw it out the window. And I think that this time in, like I was starting to say, this time in the world, like we should. I'm saying should, and that's not really the right word, but like I feel like a lot of us could take a little bit more care in stuff. Like, one, we should have less stuff, but also to be able to pass it on to the next person instead of like, I'm not using it, we're just going to throw it away. Like it's a really that's a harsh ending for that.
Hmm. Yeah, it's an interesting time. And like my business, the more people buy and the more people consume, the better, in theory, the better my business is. And so when I'm out here sort of talking about circular economy and those sorts of things, it's, maybe it's not great for business, but I mean, we live in a time where people are, it's so, everything is so disposable. It's convenient. Like everything we see is designed to sell us something. They have incredible data on all of our behaviors. Like none of us are immune to it. And so things are very easy to buy. It's disposable. We're mass consumers, and we have this like convenience society. Like my the people who lived in the house next door to me they're much younger than me, and we would watch that like dinner time there would be 3 DoorDash trucks that would come by because like each person in the family was ordering their own
Oh my gosh.
thing. And so you've got this idea. So like the retirees, they're on fixed income, and so when they're making these decisions for us to clean, even though they have a demand for us when they're making this decision, their process is a little bit different. And then I'm 46, so I'm kind of mid generation here, and so I would have a hard time spending, but I'm also fairly do it yourself kind of person. So I would have a hard time maybe hiring somebody to do the sorts of things that people hire us for. But the younger generation, like everything comes to their door. And so the idea of hiring somebody to come throw away your Amazon boxes is not that far fetched. And so like if you look at our demographics, we always are older, so it's always 45, 50 and above are typically the people who hire us because they've had time in their life to accumulate. Physically maybe they can no longer do it and they've got some disposable income. And then but I think we'll continue to skew younger as people maybe are just so used to having like this convenience thing. Like
They
there
grew
are
up with
plenty of
it, right?
yeah, there are plenty of times we come to people's houses and all we're picking up are Amazon boxes. I mean, they just roll up the garage door and there's 100 Amazon boxes that haven't been broken down or just thrown into the garage, and that's what they hire us to pick up. So, and no judgment because we all live our life different, but there's plenty of times where we see that convenience at play.
It's so interesting to see the differences in generations. Like I don't feel like I'm that different until you say something like that and I'm like, "Whoa."
Right, right.
So the psychology of stuff, I know you touched on that a little bit earlier, but can you just explain what exactly that you mean by that?
Yeah, I mean, I think we see it in a bunch of different ways, and so I don't know if I have a specific like here's what that means, but I think somebody had once told me a client was like messy bed, messy head. Like I just need the stuff out because I can't even think. Like it's creating a lot of friction, vibrational, whatever. Like the stuff in my environment is cluttering up my mind and I just need it gone. And I feel that for sure. Like I have 3 kids. I walk in, I'm like, I just like the stuff out of place. bothered. I mean, I also do this for a living, and so my perspective is totally warped. And so, you know, I was probably wired a little bit different anyway, but now certainly from exposure, I'm maybe wired a little bit different. But I definitely feel an environment when you come in and things are out of order and things are cluttered, and you just feel like a little bit of uneasiness. So I think there's an element of that. I guess a story that comes to mind is we did a donation pickup for a woman, and she had a very nice house, a little rural part of town, but a very nice house. And we walked in and we're looking around and we're saying, hey, go show us the things that we need to get. And we noticed that there's like this white powder all over the floor. And we're like, what's all over the floor? We didn't ask her, but we're trying to figure it out. And I could read my partner's mind. Like we're kind of making eye contact, like what's going on? And then like we look in the corner and there's like feathers everywhere. And we're like, what is going on? And so then I could see through the family room in the backyard, and there's like a flock of geese back there. And so she, I think, saw that I was like trying to connect all the dots, and she's like, it's duck poop. I'm like, okay. And she's like, look, my husband died unexpectedly. When that happened, my world turned upside down. And like
Yep.
taking care of the house was the least of my worries. Like I didn't, I couldn't think about that. I didn't care about that. Like it was nothing to me. So it's she's just very matter of fact. She's like, and so it is what it is. And
Yeah.
then we had probably come to her house 5 or 6 times after that, where just, and this was over the course of probably 6 to 8 months. And so we would take a little bit more, take a little bit more, and we got to know her really well. And you could kind of see her go through the grieving process and begin to heal. And eventually we helped move her into her new house. And so she was off on her own and she had this sort of new life and she had recovered. And so you just realize like the stuff was just, it was noise. It was
Yeah.
just there. And so, I don't know if the stuff was necessarily creating, a psychological response, but it was just the way she dealt with it was this became that. Or when we move people into assisted living and, or even when somebody passes away, and sometimes like families will be so focused on just checklist, like, I got to do this, 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 very task oriented. And then, like, all of a sudden, we get the house cleared and they're sitting there and they break down because it's like, this was one of those psychological barriers where it's just like, I don't even know how to deal with this. And now all of a sudden it's been dealt with, and now they have to deal with the emotions of whatever they're navigating. And so they were using the stuff as a tool or a crutch or a focus point as they're moving through that specific situation. So we see it a bunch of different ways. And then we're in hoarding houses, and at first, whenever we tell people I tell people I do junk removal, and they're like, oh, you must see a lot of hoarding houses. And no, we don't. We see a handful, but it's not the majority of our work. But when you get in it, it's like it stops being an oddity, or stops being like, it's whatever you thought it was going into it. Now all of a sudden you're like, there was a person here, and the person
Mm-hmm.
was suffering.
Right.
And so you see that, and it goes like, and we get overwhelmed too. I mean, we've been in, we did a hoarding house where I walk in, and I'm not very tall, but like my head is rubbing the ceiling because I'm walking on so much stuff. And it's a 2,000 square foot house, and we take 120 yards of stuff out of there. And, like, it's a lot of stuff. But you're just going through layers of people's life, and you get to know them,
Right.
and you're
Yep.
telling yourself stories about the people as you're going through. It becomes very personal, and
Absolutely.
I did not expect that with this job. It was I thought it was going to be minimalist, simplify, like transactional, and then you're sitting in somebody's living room and they're crying and they're
Yes.
hugging you, and you're like, this is it's rewarding in ways I never expected.
Yeah, those connections. Like, I'm sure there are people that feel, if you're talking about like a hoarding house or someone who's like the lady with the duck poop, I'm sure they feel judged by
Hmm.
people who come in and they're like, oh my gosh, my house is such a mess, but then you learn, you hear the stories and you get to know them and you're like, this person is just so overwhelmed. I've when my mom passed away, I was just like, the my world stopped, but the whole world was still moving, and I was like, I don't even know where to start with
Yeah.
anything. And so I feel for these people. Like, I just, there's so much, especially when you accumulate a lot of stuff, or if it's someone else's stuff, like someone that you lived with, their stuff is surrounding you and you feel like you can't breathe. And
Hmm.
so what a gift it is to have someone, and not just like, some dude, but like someone with
Right.
a heart that
Right.
will listen and support you and not judge. Like, I feel like that's such an important part of it in situations where the person is still there,
Right.
to
Yeah.
not make them feel shame, because we got
I think,
plenty,
I think,
we're all
I
good.
think that's, I think that's a lot of it. I think there is a lot of those feelings. And sometimes the shame is like, you feel gluttonous. Like, I, I bought this stuff, I consume this stuff, now I'm spending money to get rid of it. Like sometimes it's just as simple as that. But a lot of times everybody will apologize for the condition of their house, and we're like, no, we're like, no judgment. We have seen everything there is to see, and so it
Yeah, we're
it
here to
is,
help, man. That's
yeah, yeah, it is what it is. Like, we're show us the problem and let us solve it.
Yep. But so, I mean, I love that. I mean, again, that you educate your employees so that they're also kind, I assume, but they're looking to save as much as possible. And I want to also just quickly bring out that before we started recording, you had a pair of headphones on and you were like, these are thrifted from a job that we did, and you said your entire office is as well.
Yeah, so we everything from my desk to, I mean, our conference room table, our TV on the wall, it's all stuff that we picked up on a job. So I think we legitimately outfitted our entire office for under $1,000, which was essentially two computers and a couple phones.
That's
So
unheard of.
which is great. Yeah, we it yeah, and we still, like, we're doing an office clean out now, and they've got some wire shelving, and so we're telling the guys, make sure you bring those back because we've got a need for those things.
Sure.
So yeah, those headphones were things that we picked up along the way. My house is pretty
Full
well
of
full of stuff,
furnish.
so
Yep.
I try not to bring too
Uh,
much home, but
Yeah. Well, yeah. But things that are needed, if you come across it, you're like, hey. um, I think that it's such a great mindset these days. When coming off of the seasons of excess and convenience and stuff like that, like to I guess take on a new mindset of like, that was then, we're gonna, we don't need all this stuff, and so we're gonna find a new home for it. And
Right.
I'm sure, I know that, I mean, my sister used to live in Charlotte, so I know that there are people that could use stuff.
Hmm.
But I do you what's your, see if I can make the right words, but like, how do you how do you find the people? I guess you said you have like a resale type of thing.
Hmm.
But like, do you communicate that to people, or is it just like a Facebook post or something like that?
We do, yeah. So we have a Facebook group. So we called it an online thrift store, and so we would typically post to that group 24 hours before we put it on Facebook Marketplace. We moved into this space in March, and so now we're really trying to just promote the idea that, hey, we have a space to come here. And so I think once a month, we're trying to do it next week, but once a month, essentially do a garage sale. Like, we're posting stuff on our Facebook group or on Facebook Marketplace, but
Yeah.
once a month, come and, hey, like, this stuff isn't selling, make us an offer, come get it, take it.
Yeah.
That's just keep it in use if we can and make space. That's the danger. Like there's two parts to the challenges of our sorting situation. One is when we do jobs, especially high volume jobs, there's just too much to make great sorting decisions. And so, like, if we're cleaning out somebody's garage, we can't go through every box because, like, we're B Corp, but we're a for profit business. And so, I can't have guys on a project. We got to do 30 jobs a week. So, I can't have guys on a project for 3 days going through boxes just to make a decision on what is going to be donated or not. We encourage the
Right.
homeowner
Not on
to
the
do as
spot, at
much.
least.
Yeah, we'll encourage the homeowner to do as much as they can if that's important to them. But part of our value proposition is you don't have to do a whole lot for us. Like we can come and be the labor for you. But the less sorting they do on the front end on the big jobs, the harder it is for us to make good decisions. The other is there's not a lot of great places to take it. So our warehouse is 2,000 square feet. That felt really big when we moved in. It's full now. And
Right.
so we can't keep
I'm
bringing
just
it back
imagining
here.
6 couches. Like,
Yeah. Like it fills up pretty fast. So we can't warehouse it. And then even if you take it, like we work with a bunch of different charities and donation partners. And I always tell people like we use our charities like golf clubs in the golf bag. So like we know Habitat for Humanity is looking for this. We know Tender Hearts is looking for this. We know we can go to Beds for Kids with that. We know
that's great.
I know people don't love Goodwill, but they have their place. And so we'll use Goodwill, when we need to. But we'll try to target, but we're still at their mercy and they fill up too. And so we can have some really great furniture and we show up to Habitat and they say, it's awesome and I love to take it, but I got no
Don't have
place
any
to put
place
it.
for it. Yeah.
Or taste change or technology changes. So entertainment units that used to house square TVs don't
Right.
house a
So many
rectangular
of those
TV
these
anymore.
days.
Yeah, pianos. Everybody, pianos are hard to get rid of and they're hard to
Keyboards are
find
so,
places
yeah.
for.
Yep.
So
Yeah, I had somebody, I know somebody that sold their house with a piano in it because they were like, I
Mhm.
don't have a place for it.
yeah, pianos and pool tables end up going with the house.
I my first house we bought with a pool table in the basement
Yep, yep,
that was never ever ever used.
yeah,
17 years I lived there and nope, never used it.
right,
Except for storage. We put stuff on
right,
top of it.
right.
So, so you've mentioned it a couple times, Cameron. But so you have a really big. So you're a B Corp,
Hmm.
and you said you were the only B Corp junk removal in the United States, right? Did
Yes,
I understand
yeah,
that right?
we are America's first and I believe the only B Corp certified junk removal company in the country. There's a company in Australia that has it. We got ours in March of 2024, and I believe he got his in September of 23, so a couple months ahead of us, but I think we're the only two.
Wow.
And B Corp, your audience probably knows what it is, but not everybody does. But it's a independent entity, B Labs, that essentially verifies you balance purpose with profits. When we had gone through it, they evaluated you essentially on five criteria. One is your commitment to the environment. The other is your commitment to your community in terms of giving and participation in your community. Your commitment to your employees, your customers, and then the last is governance. And so in South Carolina, you can become a legal B Corp, which is different. So, like, there's the tax entity. So, you're an S Corp. But then we are legal B Corp, which really means that if I were to ever sell the business, whoever were to take it essentially has to subscribe, and B stands for benefits, beneficial. So whoever would buy the business is essentially committing to maintaining the same beneficial standards that I have. And I've talked to other businesses who are like, yeah, I looked into the B Corp thing, but I really didn't want to do the legal B Corp thing because that would mean that whoever I sold the business to, I'd have a limited sales audience. And
Right.
and I get that.
True.
but we've made this commitment to run this business. I mean, it's part of the business's DNA. And
Right.
so like
Exactly.
if I were to ever sell it and I were to sell it to somebody who would completely abandon that part of it,
Yeah. It's not
I'd
the
be
same
pretty
business.
disappointed. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I was fine. Obviously I was fine with that. But yeah, it's B Corps is helpful for us in a couple ways. One, there's a marketing component to it. Like for those 20% of people who know what B Corp is and really value what it stands for, then we get to hang our hat on that. But it also acts as our North Star. And so we get to be able to say, like, hey, is this decision in alignment with who we are and what we stand for? And what would B Corp think about it if we are up for recertification? They look at this decision. Doesn't mean we're going to make every decision. We still have to keep our doors open, and we talk about that a lot. Like I'd love to give to everybody and do all the awesome things, but if we aren't profitable, then we can't do any of it. And
Right.
so that's part of it, is how do we continue to grow the business, remain profitable, me be able to take care of my family, my employees be able to take care of theirs, and also do all the cool things that we want to be able to do. And so B Corp was a good platform for that. We're up for recertification in March of 27. So it's a 3-year cycle. The standards have changed, and so we're just now embarking on those recertification
Everything.
efforts. We're actually working with a student group at North Carolina State. And so we're their summer project where we've essentially opened the books to our business, and they're going to go through everything, look at the new certification standards, and put together a game plan for us to be able to go through that. So that's really exciting. One, because it's a lot of work and I appreciate having the help, but two, to be able to get like outside perspective and feedback from people who are not in it every day,
Yep.
especially young people, is going to be exciting, because I know they're going to come back and say like, why don't you do this? And I'm going to give them, well, we can't do that because, and then I'm going to have to catch myself and say, well, what if we did?
Yep.
Um, and so I'm excited for that process.
That's I love that part actually. I mean that you're talking to people in a different generation, people that are upcoming, and to say, why don't you do this, or what if you did this, and instead of shooting it down instantly, get curious and like, what would that look like, and is that even possible? And huh to it's it's I love that you're constantly like just considering other options, like how it could be different, how it could be better, how you could, I don't know, just satisfy more people. um I'm really excited about this. I wish that I had something like this here. I should look into that and see.
Yeah, I
But
think, I mean, to everybody's, to the junk removal industry's credit, I mean, I think for the most part, people are doing what they can. Um,
sure.
Maybe because there's a financial incentive to be able to do it. So obviously, if you can scrap versus dump, so if I can take it to a scrapyard and get paid $30 instead of dumping it for 30, like that's a $60 turnaround. And so there's an incentive to be able to do that. So if you can donate it, even if you don't get paid for it, at least you're not spending money to dump it. So I think everybody like has that just from a bottom line standpoint. What I don't think people have the accountability, like the B Corp provides the accountability. And so we keep our diversion numbers, we make them public, we share them. Like we don't, when we're at 30%, we tell people we're at 30%. I know some of the big name franchises say we divert up to 90%. That's not a number that you can achieve over the year. I feel confident saying you cannot achieve it. The amount of times I see those trucks in the dump and other places, I know
Right.
that they're not at that, but maybe on any particular job, like maybe your job can be up to 90% diversion. So I don't know. And I've even talked to people, like we have a place here called the Innovation Barn in Charlotte, and really they're a public-private partnership, but they're supposed to be the model of the circular economy. And they've got a lot of small businesses that work out of their hub, and they have like we used to go there and volunteer, and like they work with the Spectrum Center, so the arena here where the Hornets play, and they would take all the glass after events, and then you crush the glass, and then they give that to a concrete company who'll use the crushed up glass for concrete, or they've got food. They do a lot of really cool things. And our guys would go there and they'd be like super motivated. Like they'd be like, what if we do this? What if we do that? And like it was awesome that they would come away with so many ideas. And you did have to have that what if conversation. And then you also had to remember
Mm-hmm.
that like the innovation barn is not us, because they are a subsidized thing that is here to exemplify what can happen. We're a business that is self-funded. We gotta maintain cash flow. We can't subscribe to all the experimental stuff, but we can be motivated and inspired by it. But I'd go to them, and I'm, they're like, you can't get to 100% diversion or 80% diversion. I'm like, well, you can, but your audience changes, because now you have to pick jobs or pick customers who only
That really.
have divertible material, which we may or so maybe that's a target for it, maybe it isn't, but we have that as, if we're at 50%, how do we get to 60%? How do we get to, so that's some of our conversation. But I think the industry is incentivized to be able to make decently good decisions when they can.
Right. Right. I feel like, and you had said this earlier, you just, it basically, you have to celebrate the wins. I mean, 30%, 50% saved from the landfill is like, that's huge progress. I mean, if you imagine all of that stuff, 50% that you saved, that, if you imagine that in the landfill and it didn't need to be, that it's huge. That's a huge benefit to what your business is contributing.
Yeah. Yeah. And we're just a
So,
small company. So we're like, if we were able to do 500,000 pounds, if everybody was doing that, then those are big numbers. Like because we had started during COVID, what I found interesting about that period of time was we were very divided. Like the world felt like we were like at odds and nobody could agree on anything. And then you'd go talk to your neighbor who you just saw posted something crazy on Facebook, and you're like, we get along on like 80% of the things that we can talk, and it's just like you feel like you're here and I feel like I'm here, but now we're really not. We're like here. Um, and so like I liked that part of it. And this business felt like that was a chance to maybe celebrate some of those things. I'm like sustainability or responsible
for sure.
decisions or whatever you want. Like it's not a political thing. It's just like this is wasteful and let's not waste. Like you tell your kids, don't throw that away. It's still, so it's the same thing. So I liked that part of it because we had started at a time when I think people were ready for people to get back to work. Like our community was very supportive in our getting started, because it was just, hey, like here's guys. We all, my team at the beginning, we were all former events people, and we're like, hey, we used to work in the events business. We're no longer able to do that, so now we're doing this. And so we found a
Mm-hmm.
lot of great support in that way. But it was just make the good decision as often as you can. And I had a path of thought, and now I lost it. But that was the idea. Was just
Welcome to
keep.
my world.
It was the idea, like the think local, act local philosophy. That's where I was going with that, because so
Right.
much of it is like think global, act local, and like that's true. But like you're going to be most impacted by your immediate surroundings. And so if you think, how can I participate here locally and improve my local community, then that's going to improve things for me. And that in turn, you know, helps our community, helps the larger community. And now all of a sudden you do have
Exactly.
that. And so that was
That
sort of the
that
concept.
global. Right. So I'm curious, Cameron, is this what you saw for when you started Trash and Stash?
Um, Good question. Yes and no. um, I think
Okay.
I'm really proud of what we built. I really like what I do. I have a great group of people who work for me. We have amazing customers who we're very fortunate to be able to serve. It's provided for me and my family. It is challenging. So it's all of those things. And so to that extent, yes, I think it's, sort of it's become what and my visions probably continue to adjust as we go on. But I think yes, it's that. It's also like way harder um doing what we do than I thought it was going to be. Um I think when I started, I was like, what's a transactional business that we can come, do the work, get paid for the work, and go do it again? And that's, we're solving a need. Let's connect the pieces and do that. I also, and I hate telling this part of the story, but like, I was like, what's a business that like stupid people can make money doing? And I'm like, and I was totally wrong to be able to think that, but I'm like looking around, going, well, I can haul trash, and then I realized like it's very complicated operationally because we are it can't it's route based, but it's not route based because we don't know what our load size is going to be. Like we have an idea of what we're going to pick up before we get there, but that's often not the truth when we get there. So we might go and think it's only going to be 6 yards and it ends up being 9. And that affects the next job because now you thought you were going to have room for another 6,
Takes
but you
longer.
don't. And so then you can't map it from this job to that job. You've got to figure out, okay, what's my nearest, half of this load needs to go to the donation center, half of this load needs to go to the dump. How do we get to those two things?
Right.
How do we load a truck properly so that we can get our donations off the back of it and not bury it behind the trash? So it's not a straight line. So every day we're kind of having to route and create and make decisions over the
Mm-hmm.
course. Man, I mean, I managed people. I had a team, of 100 students when I was working on our college campuses. I have a much smaller team now, but managing full-time employees who depend on you for their livelihood, who, working on a truck, you're in a submarine, like you're with that guy sitting next to you for 8 hours a day. And sometimes it's like, is he mad at me? Like he's quiet today. He's not, he must be mad at me. Or like, did you wear deodorant today? Or like, I don't like the way you chew. Like you get all of
Very
that.
important.
And so you're
Yep.
dealing with those human elements. And so I think that was more
Well, it's like being
complicated.
married to somebody, basically.
Yeah. Yeah, you spend a lot of time with these people, and like we don't have to do team building exercises because every day is a team building exercise. Like how are you going to get this china hutch down the stairs? And so you're constantly solving problems and working together. So that's but that people element is probably more difficult than I had anticipated. Keeping trucks on the road is more difficult than we'd anticipated. Like yesterday, the brakes went out on a truck mid job, and
Oh
so
gosh.
I had to
Oh
go
my gosh.
go find a rental truck, rescue them on the they ended up they were able to get it to a service station, but
Phew.
and we got it fixed, but it was like we still had 5 jobs
Well,
that
and
they had to
having
get
three
to.
vehicles is more to manage than one for sure.
Yeah, the more vehicles add more layers of complication. That goes back to our buying our little mini truck. We're like smaller tires, you know regular fuel. It can go to a regular mechanic. Like there's just keeping it on the road. The simpler the better. So
Right.
to that extent, that I underestimated those parts of the job, and I definitely underestimated the people who do this kind of work because it's complicated work, and there's a very specific type of intelligence to be able to do this type of job, and it's really nuanced. Like we've got to find employees who can sit there and be non-judgmental and comfort somebody who's going through something difficult. They have to be able to physically carry heavy things. They have to be comfortable in hot and dirty environments. They have to be able to put quotes together and complete a sales
Hmm.
transaction. Like there's a lot of parts, and that's a lot to ask of somebody who is looking for blue collar type of work.
Yep. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it takes, especially adding that B Corp label on, like that requires a lot of sensitivity and thoughtfulness. So good for you. I mean, I
Yeah, I
hope that
appreciate it.
staffing is not too big of a deal.
We are intentionally. small right now. Like and I had gone into this year like, how do we scale? Like, let's talk about scaling. Every business wants to scale, and so like, how do you do it? One is to do more jobs, but adding volume means you're adding trucks, you're adding labor, you're adding a lot of overhead. You got to create the marketing engine that creates enough demand to be able to drive more jobs, and so all that costs money. And so I'm like, you're doing a lot more work, and I probably am not taking home. Like last year, we grew 40% in sales.
Amazing.
Yeah, I mean that was a huge accomplishment, but we made less money. Like we were far less profitable last year than we were the year before, even though we had done 40% more. So I'm like, okay, well, the other way to grow is to do bigger jobs, and so let's raise our average ticket, and our average ticket has grown over the years. Commercial jobs are a big part of that because if you can do the big office and warehouse cleanouts, then those are much bigger ticket items, and they don't come across every day, but those definitely move the needle. And so let's
Right.
focus on
And the
doing
resale
that.
ads too, right?
Yeah. Yeah. The resale, I mean, I think our resale business can be a standalone business in and of itself. It's just, it's something that we got to devote attention to. And that helps takes the pressure off the sorting and those sorts of decisions. So those two things feed each other. Um, but then we kind of got into that and we're like, you know what? Like, let's just focus on doing, serving as many people as we can and doing a really good job at it, and can focus on incremental organic growth. Like, let's not try to like hit the insta grow.
Yeah.
Like I
I mean, it's
tried to
only been
break.
4 years, right?
Yeah, it was 5. It
4 years?
was 5 this April. Yep. And so I'm not super patient, but we tried to hit the Instagram a little bit, and I tried to break some systems going into this year just to say, well, like, what are we optimizing things that we should discard? And so I pumped the brakes a little bit on that, and so I think we're in a much healthier spot right now than we were probably at the end of last year and the beginning of this year.
Okay. Well, I mean, that's very thoughtful, and I can sure appreciate that. I mean, that's growth is hard. It really is because scaling.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, the nice thing is, we're 5 years, so we're not babies anymore.
Mhm.
And some of the things that were earthquake problems in year one are like a Tuesday today. And so, like, quite literally, yesterday, brakes going out on a truck was a huge problem. But it was like, okay, well, now we know what we need to do: go rent a truck, meet the guys, get the other truck to the shop, get them rolling, and then
Right.
keep things on track. And so that's what we did. But or create some redundancy. So if somebody is sick, like have guys who are cross trained so a crew member can step into a lead role, or we've got a relationship with a labor organization, and so if we have a guy call out, at least we've got a set of hands who have been trained to our standards and meet sort of our, as best we can, our quality control metrics. So we've built
Yeah,
some of those systems, but it is certainly not stress free.
for sure. Okay. Well, is there any advice for the rest of us that are not doing this job? Like what would you recommend, or is there some like just general advice that you would like to leave people with?
No, I mean, so much of what we do is a result or a reaction to the consumer decisions before that. And so I think it's being thoughtful about what you buy, what you put into your house. I think I really have been geeking out on the circular economy. I think it's a pretty cool conversation. Um, and so like I was telling somebody the other day, like I always use like a bike as an example. I'm like, well, like if we go and we pick up a bike from somebody's house, if we donate it or resell it and it gets reused as a bike, that's great because like the bike has its material value, like the cost of the metal and the stuff like that energy exists, but there's
Mm-hmm.
all the energy that went into turning that thing into a bike. And so you retain all of that, like manufacturing and sales and transportation, like all of that stuff went into turning that into a bike. So if it stays a bike, then you keep all that. If we recycle it, you lose that stuff, you retain the material value. So that's still a better decision than throwing it away and losing all of that. But you retain the value. So like thinking through that part of it, I think is like I probably wasn't that thoughtful about it until I started to really understand and think about these sorts of things. Or I was trying to write a book and like I was reading about, I was like, when did people start throwing things away? Like, what's the history of people throwing things away? And so like I was looking at like Mesopotamia, and I'm like, this idea of
Wow.
like like bricks. So like back then it took a lot of effort to make a brick. Like there's a lot of natural resources that you had to go and but then it was like when they would recycle bricks, like all of that, like it was a shortcut because you had all this material. Now you just had to return it into something else. And
Reshape it.
so,
Yeah.
so there was an economic part of that where it's like, now this is easier to turn it into that because all the hard work has already been done.
Right.
And so I thought I didn't, we talk about sustainability but you're like actually as an engine for business, like if you can take these resources and these materials and shortcut this manufacturing process or shortcut this resource accumulation process, then it's good for business. And even our resale business, as an example, like we get all of this stuff. We don't have any acquisition cost for the stuff that we get, so it's all new money. And so our resale business can be completely independent of our junk removal. So I think thinking, for people to just think through that process. Um, the fast and convenient is not always the best choice. I always joke like every garage we clean out, there's like a fence post digger because everybody probably moved in their house and they had to like, sink their mailbox, and that was the only time they ever used it. And then it sat in the garage for 15 years until we come and have to discard it. And so, this idea of can your neighbor lend it to you?
Right.
Especially if you're new to a neighborhood,
Yes.
go knock on your neighbor's door, ask it, introduce yourself and ask.
Yep.
Those sorts of things. Purchasing secondhand, like everybody wants to donate, but how many people want to purchase secondhand? Like it's looked at as a bargain or whatever else, but the truth is like, it's responsibility is what it is, but like it's a more responsible decision if there's things that you can keep in the world. So
Yeah. I
but
had
yeah,
so many
I
thoughts while you were talking about that.
don't know if that's advice or tips, or I don't want to sound like I'm coming from someplace high because Amazon comes to my house often. Where
Yeah.
we consume and purchase and do all those things too. And so it's just trying
Right.
to not make the best decision as often as you can.
Well, so I mean, it sounds like just being like sort of mindful when you're making purchases. Like, do I actually need this? And to think, and I've had people tell me, like, think about the full life of the thing. Like, what happens when it breaks? Like, do you have a plan for once you're done with it or whatever? But I will say, I blame planned obsolescence
Mhm.
technology
Yeah.
on you were saying, when did we start throwing things away? There are so many things that are like they're made to break. And
Mhm.
you were talking about bricks. Like, have you bought a brick lately? Because I've been buying bricks. I was buying bricks for my house in Virginia, and they fall apart. You drop it on the ground, and it is in a million pieces. Like, it is not the same brick that there used to be.
That sounds exciting.
I just feel like there's so much. Can you leave that? There are a lot of things that are like they're made to break so that we have to spend more money and get new things. And then there's also, so I was thinking about like a library of things in
Hmm.
each area. Like, if you have a library of things near you, you were saying, borrow from a neighbor. I did an episode with Kelly Dempsey a few months ago, who just created an app called Barterloo, so bartering with people. And anyway, those are two good. Oh, like repair shops. Like I know that my library locally has like a repair cafe once a month or once every 2 months, something like that. Like we need to learn these skills to keep things going.
I was telling my kids, I'm
I
like,
know that will affect your job, but
no, but I mean, there's still plenty. There's, I don't think there's any, even if people make responsible decisions, I think there's still plenty for us. But I was telling my
sure.
kids, like, I grew up where there was a shoe repair place in the shopping center. There's a vacuum repair place in the shopping center. Like, those used to be jobs.
Yes.
And,
Yes.
I think the idea that there's a cobbler who's out there
Tailors.
fixing shoes, like, yeah, like
Yep.
that's seems crazy to them. But that goes to, because I was thinking about your leading question of like what's sustainability. And I know sustainability is this idea of making decisions today with a mind for how they impact tomorrow. But I also like think along the lines of durability. Like that word kept coming to mind because when you do make the decision to purchase something that's more durable, then it's going to last longer and has a better shot at a second life. Some of it is unavoidable. Like these expensive refrigerators are gonna last 4 years. These TVs are gonna burn out in 4 or 5 years. Like that's that we're being sold a product, and so they want to be able to replace those products. I get that. And then like this idea of thriftiness. When we went into this year, I have three keywords for my team to think about, and one of them was thrifty. And I wasn't coming from a place of wanting to be cheap or feel cheap, but I
Yep.
was like, we work hard for every dollar that we bring in, and so let's be mindful about every dollar that we spend, because you went out and you sweated and you lifted and you carried and you smiled and you did all of these things to put that dollar into our company bank account. And so let's be responsible with how we apply that. And I think that's true in our homes and in our life too. So this
Mm-hmm.
idea of thrifty, I think, is probably not a word we use very often, and it probably comes with some negative connotation. But I just think it's placing value on the effort and all the things that went into earning that dollar and making sure that dollar is working as hard as it can for your family.
Yes. Oh, I think that's so great. Okay. So, I mean, you were just talking about sustainability, and that was my sort of end question. But um, my only last question is, how can people find you, Cameron, and like learn more? And maybe if you're in the Charlotte area, if you need any help.
Yeah. So we are on all the socials. So you can find us on Facebook, on Instagram. The webpage is trashandstash.com, A-N-D spelled out, trash first, stash second. Um, but yeah, we're there. My phone number's on the webpage, so I'm happy to answer any questions. And a lot of it is just people like, hey, like, what do you do? How does this work? Always, and I guess I'll leave with this on how to find us. But um, in my arena management career, I had the opportunity to go to the Disney Institute a few times, and they had taught us that the most commonly asked question in a Disneyland park is, "What time is the 3 o'clock parade?" And so you're like, yeah, that's everybody's reaction. Like, well, duh, it's
What?
3 o'clock. But really, what people are asking is, what time should I line up? Where's the best place to see it?
Right.
Like, there's 100 other questions, but they don't know how to ask those other questions, and so they break the ice with, what time is the 3 o'clock parade? And so I'm like, well, what's our 3 o'clock parade question? And it's, hey, I don't know if you do this, but my stuff's not junk. And so what are they telling us? They're telling us this stuff still has value. It's no longer useful to me, but it still has value. I don't perceive it to be junk, trash. And so, what's your process? What do you do with it? Are you the right people for me? And so we can't avoid the word junk because it's just become a part of what we do.
Mm-hmm.
We've adopted the idea that junk is a verb, not a noun. Like it's the act of casting something aside. We're not calling the thing junk. And I think
Right.
that helps us frame it in the right way. So if anybody has those, hey, I don't know if you do this, my stuff's not junk questions, then reach out to us because we're happy to talk about it. And sometimes the answer is, hey, call this organization because they can help. So it's not always us. I mean, we can always be a part of the solution, but let's understand what the problem is and how you're trying to navigate it, and then can we put you in the right place? Because at the end of the day, we're not trying to get rich on any one job. We want to be able to serve as many people as we can, but we also want to do it honorably and admirably. And if we can help solve people's problems, even if we're not the guys putting our hands on it, we're happy to do that.
Awesome. Okay. And all the links will be in the show notes, you guys. Cameron, thank you so much. Thank you for all that you do. Thank you for the thoughtfulness of your business. Like, I think that it's so needed. It's so needed. I mean, I was telling you, when we lose people, or if we're collecting things, it's a very personal thing, and you feel that people are judging you. And I love that you have hired and you are kind people that are patient and not judgmental, and helping to understand people, because I feel like there's so much shame in life. And this feels so silly when we're talking about trash and stash, but also it's necessary because we collect things because we are lacking something in life. And so to let go of these things it feels very personal, and you feel grief. And so to have someone not judge you and just be kind it makes such a difference.
Yeah.
So thank you for that.
No, thank you for saying that. I appreciate that. That means a lot.
And thank you for your thoughtfulness toward the earth, and for your COVID pivot.
Yeah. This is not where I expected to be, but I'm glad to be here.
Awesome. Well, thank you again for sharing so much and for your time today. I really appreciate this.
Yeah, absolutely. Me too. Thanks for the opportunity.
I just want to take a second to thank my guest again for speaking with me and sharing such great information. I love having these conversations with folks. I also want to thank Buzzsprout for hosting the podcast, for Jane Bolduck and her music genius, for Becca Coffron and her award-winning artwork. And thank you for listening. I appreciate that so much. Please check out the show notes for any links and extra information. And if you would like to follow my guest and find out more about them, I'm sure they would love the follow. And if you don't mind leaving a rating or review wherever you're listening, and just help to get this podcast in front of new eyes, that would be amazing. I would really love that. And feel free to reach out to me on the socials and let me know what you're thinking. And if you would like to be a guest on the podcast, please let me know that. I would love to have a conversation with you about sustainability. All right. Thank you again. I hope you have a great rest of the week.
There'll come a day, my mama told me, when I find love to have and hold me, a heart that's strong and so sincere. Just tell me, how do I get there from here? Oh, tell me, how do I get there from here? 'Cause here and now I'm so far down that mercy's bound to find me. We'll find a way to soothe the sickness. We'll heal the ache with sweet forgiveness. Wages of war will just disappear. Just tell me, how do I get there from here? I wonder, how do I get there from here? Yeah, 'cause here now I'm so far down, and mercy's bound, yeah, to find me. When that state of grace has finally found me, will there be music, ooh, and good friends around me? Yeah, yeah. And I'll just smile through happy tears and wonder,